Now, for more insight into the significance of the meeting between President Xi and Biden, let's bring in Einar Tangen. He is the senior fellow at the Taihe Institute. Einar, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure, my friend. A lot to talk about. First, let's talk about the importance of this 3-hour meeting ahead of the actual conference. What is this global impression? What do people think about these two leaders meeting, and what is the importance of their discussion?
Well, I think there's a collective sigh of relief, Sean. I mean, people have been wondering what direction things could go. I mean, you had the U.S. talking about establishing a bottom to all of the relationships and red lines and things like that. On the Chinese side, they were saying, look, you know, the world is looking at us. We're supposed to be the responsible actors because of our economic side. We need to come together. But unfortunately, this is kind of hijacked the entire G20 meeting, set it off on a different scale. I mean, the talk should be about, you know, your package before, about the economic, health, digitalization. These were the main themes that Indonesia was trying to push. At this juncture, as I said, you know, there's a sigh of relief, but it's not clear whether or not there are going to be actions, especially on the U.S. side, that follow up on the rhetoric.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because Janet Yellen today earlier said she hopes that this meeting ahead of the actual conference does something to breathe life into the economic relationship that, of course, the #1 economy in the world has with the #2 economy in the world. What do you think the chances of that are? The fact that these two leaders can sit down and say, look, here in the U.S., we are undergoing horrible inflation. In China, we're really concerned that buying among our 400 million strong middle class is slowing down dramatically. There's a lot of logic in these two finding a way forward. Sorry, we appear to have lost Einar, at least for the time being. Hang on a second. I think we have him back. Einar, are you there?
Okay, yeah.
I apologize for that.
Sorry
but if you can
about
pick
that.
up and answer again, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Janet Yellen has all of a sudden burst onto the international stage. She's talking about China. She's talking about Russia, Europe, Africa. Unusual. She's a Secretary of Treasury, but up to this point, she's been rather mild. Now, remember, she was the one who has originally said, look, we need to take these tariffs off. They're not helping Americans, and they're certainly not hurting the Chinese. But it is hurting international trade. So I think she's very clearly on this line where she says, it's important to get things back on track, especially given the economic situation. This kind of signals that within the Biden administration, Catherine Tai, who you have not seen, may be losing this battle. She's the one who's been in favor of keeping these economic sanctions in place. But there hasn't been any leverage. There hasn't been any follow through or any consequences of any positive side on her side. So this might be a shift in the policy. That would be the low hanging fruit to get rid of these tariffs.
Well, you talk about the low hanging fruit. Let's talk about some of the areas that there could be some agreement between the two. Climate change, something of that nature. What do you think the low hanging fruit is, if there is any out there?
Well, I don't think there's anything big change. The issue here is they weren't talking to each other. I mean, remember, this whole summit was planned well before Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan.
Exactly.
And that was, what kind of wrecked things. And China said, look, we don't really want to talk to you when you're threatening our national sovereignty. So now they're back on track in terms of communicating. But, the master plan is still the Paris Climate Accord. And the issue is how much progress can you make when you have a situation where countries are using more coal now? Why? Because of the conflict in Ukraine. And, we can go round and round on which side believes the other side is responsible. But at this juncture, it needs, what we need here is peace. There needs to be substantive peace talks involving Ukraine and Russia. There is not going to be a settlement on the battlefield. The lines could harden. They could have a DMZ zone like they had in North Korea and South Korea. But I mean, that's not going to solve anything. So at this juncture, peace is the only way forward. Noticeably, that was not on the agenda. The U.S. did not want to discuss that.
Well, there are some other very difficult things these two have to discuss, and one that the between the United States and China, South China Sea and Taiwan. To what degree do you think they are really going to have serious discussions? Or, as you mentioned, putting the whole Pelosi, I guess, the whole Pelosi visit to Taiwan behind them and moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's not clear. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's future seems to be continuing. She's indicated she wants to go on. I don't know that that was necessarily the issue. She got stuck in a political corner, and she decided that the lesser of two evils was to go to Taiwan and make noises. Unfortunately, she didn't see the impact that that would have on U.S.-China relations. Strange, given her seniority and position in Congress. So, at this time, it's going to take either substantive talks between the military side and the commercial side, just kind of ratchet down these tensions. But Taiwan, that's the South China Sea. In terms of Taiwan, it's really hard to see. I mean, Biden made a point of bringing it up and saying that China's the aggressive one. Well, I mean, from China's perspective, the U.S. sailing warships up and down the Taiwan Strait seems to be the more aggressive action, especially in view of the fact that the U.S. is actively arming Taiwan in violation of all of the agreements that they had, even their internal ones involving the Taiwan Relations Act, which had nothing to do with the three communiques that said very clearly, and anybody has any question about it, just go back and read those. It's very clear. It says there's only one China, and the Taiwan-China relationship is an internal matter. The U.S. kicked Taiwan out of the UN. I don't know how you could be more clear about what the relationship was, but now it's being revived because of this kind of geopolitical rivalry. I mean, the U.S. wants to use different cards in order to push what it believes is necessary, which is contain China.
Well, a lot to discuss, and it's at least good that they're talking. Einar Tangen, thanks as always.
Yes.
We appreciate your insight, my friend.